Hello, this is Athena Jezik. I'm going to be doing some massage therapy and explaining a few things about massage therapy when we're working on the neck and the upper shoulders. So sit back and relax. So right now I've just got my hands under her head and I'm just checking the range of motion. A lot of the work that I'm doing that I won't be explaining is in the advanced course, the fundamentals course, which will go into advanced work. And it's very vital that you do that. I'll be explaining that a little bit as we go through these videos. But if you're a massage therapist or just wanting to learn a little bit of it, I'll be more than happy to share some of those techniques with you. So here, this is some lymph technique, just testing to see how the fluids are in the body, if they're a little bit congested or if they're flowing well. This is the opening area for the lymph system. I do have a short little newsletter for the fluid body so you can understand the fluid body better. It's also very important that you understand the body has a lot of different templates of different energy and frequency patterns, and it's important to get all of those into place because that's the way that you'll heal. Nobody can really fix you. They can help, but they can't fix you. The many layers of vibration and frequency that we have in the body is what has to come into harmony. So I'm just checking, just feeling how things are, and if she's relaxed, if the muscles are relaxed. Okay, so to start out now, I'm going to place my hands behind her neck and then put the fingers there at the base of the skull and do a little bit of a subtle stretch, a subtle traction to the neck. This is a skin pulling type technique, and there's ways that you need to learn how to get your hands into that melding position, and that way you have control to be able to traction just the fascial structure, the very more subtle part of the body. And it's a very easy and yet technical way to do it, but it does feel very relaxing to get started that way. And you also want to remember that relaxing the body, getting it prepared so that the other higher, more subtle frequencies can begin to operate properly, and so we don't have dysfunction in those energy centers of our body. Energy centers being the more subtle parts of our body. Now I just am applying some oil back here to the neck, and I'm going to apply a little bit to the shoulders. Okay, so I'm going to start out here by just running up. This is like the edge of the trapezius, and bringing that up all the way to the base of the skull and then spreading at the base of the skull, just to get started. Now you don't have to necessarily start like this, but if you're starting with the back, which I always have practiced starting with the back, mainly because people, when they come in and they're a little bit stressed out, they feel less vulnerable if they're on their stomach to begin with. So if you've just turned your person over, then this is what you can do. Now you want to take the hands and the head, and your hands, and just run up that neck muscle. It's primarily trapezius. There's a lot of muscles in the neck, but we're basically just following that line. Up we go. And then turn the head the other way. And even though this is a little difficult to see, it's the same thing. And what I'm doing here too is I'm applying some of that subtle traction to the hand that's holding the head. So I'm continually tractioning when I am doing these techniques, and then spreading at the neck there. Okay, now that I've just warmed up the neck, you could say just kind of like the warm up, it's actually more of a quote diagnostic thing that you go through by seeing where the muscles are, and these muscles are in pretty good shape. Then you want to get the head level. We talked about that in another video, but you don't want her head going backwards. You want to have it be the chin being parallel to the wall. And so we'll see how one of these works. And that brings the head up a little bit better. You can still get to the neck with this kind of a lift. Okay, and then back through here. All right, now we're going to go into the clavicle area, and I need a little bit more oil for that. You don't need to use a whole lot of oil, just enough for the viscosity to let your hands slip easily. When you work on men, sometimes when they have a little bit more hair, you're going to need a little bit more oil so that you don't pull it and make it uncomfortable. Now here's the clavicles, so let's just massage these muscles underneath the clavicles. There's a big flat muscle here that runs up, and it runs up into the neck. You can go up the neck, but you want to be very careful when you come up this front of the neck, because there's a lot of different structures. There's a lot of things that run down in that direction. And then there's a sternocleidomastoid muscle. It's a muscle that's attached down here to the clavicle area, and then it runs up to the mastoid process. And that muscle is oftentimes very pronounced. But you can get that muscle under your fingers and kind of squeeze it and pull it out. You don't want to do it with very much force, but you can get underneath it and just relax that out. And it looks like I'm pinching, but I'm not really pinching, but I'm lifting from underneath and then pulling from the top. So there's action like that happening. And then the same thing on the other side. Of course, you always want to work balanced so that things are balancing well. And we'll do another, just kind of pick that up. And then if you like, you can get both of them. Just find where that muscle is and take both thumbs and just pull open. Or it's easier actually to tuck your finger under and just kind of pull. But you want to pull gently because you're working on all of that. There's some manipulation you can do with the thyroid gland, which is located in the neck, but I'm not going to show you that particular technique here. That's something we'll be covering in the course. And check all that. Okay, now back to the clavicles. Oftentimes you're going to feel a lot of lumps and bumps along here, so if you run your fingers very slowly and you come to some of these bumps, then you want to go very slowly across them. If they seem to be a little stuck, then there's a technique to unstick that. Sometimes they just won't work out. Sometimes as you go across them, they will begin to flatten out. And sometimes they're going to stay a little bit harder, a little bit more determined to stay in a certain position. That takes the more subtle technique to draw that out. Back all the way down to the sternum. And here's the sternum. You can go across here where the ribs are, and you can get a little bit deeper here, but you're not pushing in deep. Now what I'm finding here is you're right-handed, so that works a little bit more, and the muscle is a little more developed here. There's a difference between a developed muscle and a muscle that's stuck or that's in distress. So you're going to need, with your hands, you're going to need to learn how to distinguish and translate exactly what's going on. sometimes with massage, you're going to be going over one muscle to another muscle, and people think that there's something that's not right, and it really is just one muscle that's underneath another muscle, so you want to know where that is. That's why it's very good to make sure you know the anatomy, how the muscles layer one another, and just work across there out to the shoulders. I'm going to work a little bit in the shoulders as well. This is an area that oftentimes is tight. The shoulder has a lot of range of motion, and I'm working both sides in unison, and just go around that joint and let your fingers tell you when there's something that needs attention. Now on the right side, there's a little more tension that's coming through this area. The scapula is down a little bit lower, so this is all muscle area, and here's some rough muscles right here. This is a little tight. Let me see how the other side is. This side over here is much tighter. So with that, we're going to just work the muscle by stretching it, working the thumbs. This is like a cross fiber friction, and then it's kind of like milking the muscle or ironing the muscle, and just go very slowly and carefully and pick up everything you're picking up. As you get better at doing this, then the subtle work, the subtle techniques are going to be easier to pick up once you learn how to do that, because the subtle techniques also requires you to work with your hands and with the energy that you have coming off your fingers and the energy of the body that you're working on. So that's going to take a little bit of work to get to that feeling. Now here there is kind of, it's not real bad, but it's not the way it should be. So I'm just going to hold it and allow a little bit of stretch to happen in the other direction. So my hand underneath here is going to pull up while I'm stretching down and just giving it a little stretch from origin to insertion in that area. And then it starts to work itself out very slowly. Now let's say that somebody has a shoulder injury and they have scar tissue in that area, like in that area. Scar tissue is like a wad of spaghetti. It just goes everywhere, and it really does cinch down the muscle. It will keep pain coming into the body too, and that feels very bumpy when you're going over that. There's a definite feeling to scar tissue. It's not smooth as a general rule. It depends. If it's a suture line, like somebody had surgery, it's a little bit more, but you'll still feel those tremendous little spaghetti bumps all over the place. And that's when deep tissue work is very helpful to break that up, because we do have to break that scar tissue up. But again, there's the concept, let's think through this, okay? If there's an injury there and scar tissue there, would you want to just push pressure in there really hard and aggressive, or would you want to work with the body and ease yourself into that area? I think that if you would think that through, you would think you don't want to cause any more trauma onto that area, so you don't want to push too hard, too quickly. Although sometimes you might need to use a bit of pressure. Going in slower is always a better thing to do, because you'll actually get deeper when the body is letting you in. It's going to fight you otherwise, and you're not going to really win. The body will win. It'll seem like you're winning, because the chemistry of that muscle to be able to keep it tight it gets exhausted, and so that stuff is lost and the muscle just goes into muscle failure, and people think that they've worked it out, but they really haven't, because it comes back. And that's why you have to have treatment after treatment after treatment, because the scar tissue isn't really being dealt with. It's not really being broken down in the same way. There are probably some techniques that you can go in real aggressively, and it's not that it's bad or wrong. It's just that there's ways to treat the body with a little more respect and less feeling of pain or discomfort. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going underneath, right along the scapula, the edges of the scapula, because that comes up into the neck, and I'm just doing a little push and pull with it. It's not probably the most standard massage technique that you learn in the school, but it does work. And what I'm feeling for here is any kind of tension or any imbalance with one side to the other. And if I feel that, then I'm going to exercise the subtle technique to work that out. And so, but you can just do the best you can and keep working and get those hands to understand what you're feeling, get the hands to understand what it's supposed to feel like, and go from there. And so there we have the upper shoulder, we have the neck pretty well worked. This is a little bit different work for the neck than what I've normally done in the past, but that's okay. There's a lot to do with these things. And now I'm gonna check the range of motion again, which is very gently, and I'm gonna do the traction here too. And it feels to me like there was more tension than my fingers first thought, because the range of motion feels like it's much smoother. It's moving much more liquidy instead of feeling like it's a little bit tense. It wasn't bad to begin with, but the subtleties of all this is where you really pick up a lot of information. And then just brushing across the parts that we have worked, checking the clavicles, checking on top of the clavicles where the sternocleidomastoid joint is. And I'm just wiggling it a little. There's a little bit of tension still there, but not much. On the other side of the clavicle, and then around the shoulder, just nice big circular things, and up the back, up the neck, and there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed that little piece. You can, if you're a massage therapist or a body worker, you can try this stuff out. Pay attention to what you're doing. Make sure that you're teaching your hands what to feel. That's where the key is. And when you get that, when you understand that with your hands, with the massage, with the thicker body parts, then you can get more subtle, and after a while you'll be able to actually work that energy and not hardly touch the body at all, because you'll be so close. The energy will be doing the work, sort of. I mean, it happens kind of that way, and I know some people think that sounds crazy, but there's a lot that I do where I'm just pushing energy into that part and feeling the body at the same time. So all of that is really important, but you know, it's a journey to do this and become a healing artist, and I hope that many of you take this up and find the joy of helping people to reestablish their balance in themselves. So with that, I say thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. I want to invite you to explore my course, The Foundations of Subtle Alignment. It is going to take you beyond the work of massage therapy. It will take you into the world of the subtle anatomy. Misalignment of the subtle structures is often the root cause of chronic pain, injuries, and chronically high levels of stress hormones. These techniques offer profound benefit whether you are working on people with complex issues or not. In this course, you will learn about the subtle anatomy and a protocol for assessing and aligning the subtle structures.